of Ramzan. That's unbelievable.
And
here with me, as you can hear in the background, is
Hassan Salman,
my co-host. Final showing this month.
it's rapid.
That's gone really quick. Our plan today, and we want some help from you guys out there. We want to talk about all the positive stuff in our community. And there's so much, but we're going to focus on one particular area. And we want to establish and identify as many groups, voluntary organizations, community groups, anybody that's doing good work with young people, with adults, with women, with children, etc., etc. Text in, even if you're not part of that group, text in and just tell us that they exist, who they are, where they are, whatever information you know. We've got a list of some. We're just going to free flow and go through them because we've been speaking to people in the community, and we usually get a bad ride in the press in terms of the Muslim community and the negativity around our inner city areas and etc. But there's some amazing stuff going on. And me and Hassan, we really wanted to kind of highlight some of the good projects that are out there. And the ones that we don't know, we want to build a network and a database of those projects. So the aim of the show is to get as many details as possible. We're then going to speak to the radio and see if we can share all of those details on their social media platforms, and we'll plug them on other social media platforms. And if, for argument's sake, I don't know, I wanted to send my son or daughter to a project that I didn't know exist, I now know exists. Quite simple. Yeah? So join in, text, send us any information you have about any project whatsoever, any good work that's going on out in our communities. We want to know who they are, where they are, and any contact details, and we're looking to build this. Start us with one, Hassan, one that you know of or have been involved in. You've done community work most of your life, voluntary work most of your life.
I think one that stands out from decades is like Shama Women's
Centre, yeah. Great project.
That's plugged a lot in terms of support for women and advocacy and signposting, and probably through some quite difficult times where men's kind of projects have always received funding, or men were louder in the back of the rooms where decisions were being made. So I think the fact that they're still around and still such a vocal part of the community groups it says a lot, to be honest.
And they always championed females.
Yep.
That was their driver right from day one. As you said, when kind of those issues were overlooked or weren't very important, or people, just believed that other things should have took priorities, Sharma always championed women's rights on a number of different things. Some great individuals in that project, definitely, to be fair.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of service users that have passed through their doors, when you speak to them years later and they attribute some of their success to a project, it's a nice story to hear when they may have come into the city or the country and had not much opportunity, and then somebody in Shama's helped them get jobs, access programs, courses for children, for themselves, to better themselves, to probably flee a domestically violent relationship, whatever it is, they've been there. So those that have come out the other side then go on to continue that work themselves as well.
I'll tell you what really surprised me as well. Sharma's been a staple of the community for a number of years, so that they've been there. But through the COVID period, the amount of projects that stood up through COVID and then have continued subsequently with ideas and programs and different types of it, that's been amazing as well. Yeah. Really, really positive for our community, that has.
Like Project Hope.
Project Hope,
Helen and the team had set up during COVID, and now they're still, to this day, signposting and sharing information. So that group has remained open. So even though the need has decreased in terms of COVID times, obviously it was quite a lot, but now, whenever there is bespoke pieces of work, they are still available to do that.
And I'll tell you the other good thing about all of those projects coming to life in one way or another, the amount of learning, because you just had to think on your feet quickly. A lot of these projects, nobody had done food banks before. Nobody had done shopping for your neighbour or your elderly in the community. Nobody had thought about where do we get PPE from, or et cetera, et cetera. One of the best examples is the group that stood up in COVID around doing the burials.
Yeah.
Doing gussels, doing the collections, doing the burials. Hundreds of volunteers literally in that group ready to stand up in a very difficult circumstance, led with a very difficult set of policies and procedures around COVID. Amazing. We've seen them up there.
We've seen them a number of times.
Brilliant what they're doing.
Yeah. And the fact they're training like the next generation as well, like you said.
Youngsters, young people, yes, good point.
An extremely difficult aspect of, our daily lives, to be honest. And it's something that not many people do think about. But the fact that they've been able to coach the young people into this as well, and also raise awareness and understanding that it's not just a specific piece that belongs to a certain group. So I think we mentioned that they were superstars ages back, if you remember, on like a previous show.
Yeah, absolutely. We got some of the coordinators in. It was last year, and just said thank you for what you've done and the amazing work. And we had a couple of youngsters from that group come into the studio as well and speak to us about their experiences. And that's what it's about. How do we encourage the next generation to give back to wider society? There is a selfishness in young people nowadays. You can see it's growing. They're more attracted to their social media platforms, to IT things. They're all not all about themselves, but we need to grow that out of them a bit. Very insular, yeah. Very insular. And we need to grow that out of them and make them give back to their communities in as many ways. And there's a lot of people in our communities that need help.
There is.
Let's not hide behind the truth. There's a lot of stuff going on out there that we need to address and need to focus on. Another old school project, really important project because of the audience that they serve, Ansar.
Yeah, Ansar, definitely. Especially given the aims and objectives for why Ansar was set up. And again, very difficult to access services that they've been able to champion for their service users. So definitely.
And their target audience is particularly adults with learning difficulties.
That's right, yeah.
So a very challenging group already.
Often very forgotten about.
And they do some amazing stuff. Where was we the other week where we was talking about stereotypes relating to disabilities within the Asian communities? And you'll come to me, but there was a guy there that had been working for years in this space, and he said, as recent as late last year, that there was a young man that he was working with that his family had kept away for years because they was embarrassed by his disability and his being.
Yeah.
And he got hold of him literally at the back end of last year and has started working with him for the last 4, 5, 6 months to get him out, get him into a space, work with his family to say, there's nothing wrong here. You shouldn't be embarrassed. You shouldn't be ashamed of this young person. He's a person. And he still goes on.
Yeah. I'm not surprised by that, to be honest. The fact that there is the stigma still around disability in the community and various communities. Obviously, the Muslim community exists with how many, but it still exists. And not just the, inverted commas, back home mentality. It's also with British-born people as well, not having a full understanding of disability and how it affects people. So
yeah, 100%. Some of the ones that I've worked with more recently because of particular projects that I've been involved in from a strategic perspective rather than on the ground. When I talk to some of these projects, and I'll use you as a perfect example. We started our first voluntary organisation registered charity project back in 2004. And I was talking to some projects the other day, and they was like, how did you do when you were doing it, and so on and so on and so on. And I was scratching my head, and I'm thinking, that was so long ago.
Yeah, it's like a lifetime.
So long ago. Now, you were one of the young people that used the project, came into the project as a volunteer, worked in the project, and then has used that as a platform now to go and do some of the things that you're doing. And there's many others in our community that I could mention as well, but it's a really good example. Time flies. But some of the more recent ones, you've got, is it LCIC, the twins? Yeah. They're doing some brilliant stuff in the community with young people, going out to food banks and getting them involved and showing them and sharing that experience. Yeah. You've got Outspoken with Sister Roxana, doing some great stuff with women in the parks, around activities. Yeah. Who else is there? You've got SDS, the Somali Development Centre, Jawahir. I can remember, God, I'm going to show my age a bit now, but going back to the 90s, when the first lot of Somali communities started to arrive in the city, and they were going to Regent College, Charles Keane College, as it was then, and issues occurred, and we were sitting in rooms with these Somali leaders, and I was part of those discussions. It's quite frightening at the time. But Jawahir for the Somali community, Bini Hashim, and Mr. Yeri, God. It's immense, and how they've grown as well. They've grown as a community. Women for Change, another organisation, St. Matthews.
Definitely.
We've got some talent in our community. How do we pull this together?
I think pulling it together.
I know that's a really big question, but how do we pull this together? How do we make this more valuable?
I'd say in terms of pulling together, I'd say these things pull themselves together. If you know, it's interesting when you mention all of the organizations that have started or folded or are still around. That one thing you have to rate is the evolution of charity or community organizations in Leicester. If they reshape, reform, or the people are still around and still are helping, or they move on to new pastures, there's always another group or another person that comes along. So Leicester is very hungry. I don't just mean that practically, I know you're hungry. But, you know, in terms of people wanting to get involved, so there's always the new faces that we're hearing about. And it's really nice and reassuring, especially the younger lot that are wanting to set up organizations as well. So I think they pull themselves together because they want to be known, and now they have the benefit of the social media, which many organizations didn't back in the day, where it was just about website.
No, I get that. We can't be in the radio station and not mention teams as well.
Yeah.
Who have been doing some fantastic stuff. You know, Brother Zed, who leads on that, he loves his acronyms, doesn't he? When I listen to the radio station, the man with the acronyms, he says to his guests, "Do you know what WPYST stands for?" And he goes silent, because obviously they don't. Nobody does except for him. And then he goes, "It stands for..." And they go, "Oh, no, I didn't know that." Like, they should know that. But yeah, he loves an acronym.
He makes them on the spot.
He makes them up on the spot. But they've been doing some of the more thoroughbreds of the community. There's the Memon Centre that's been there. There's the Katri Association that's been there. Piker. There's Piker that's been around. Who else? Highfield Centre.
Yeah, HCA. Yeah.
There's some projects.
There is a lot. But there needs to be, like, you know, the central. There isn't a central website for any of these things. But when you use search engines, they do normally find them. If the radio station can put some of these on the site, they can always be accessed. Well,
that's the aim. That's the aim. So people out there listening to the radio station, if you know of a project that's doing good work in the community, text them in. Don't text my phone. Text the radio station's number or send it on the social media platform, so we can start to build a kind of an address book of these organizations. Well. So we can say, here's a group of organizations that are working with young people. Here's a group of organizations that are working with women specifically. Yeah. Here's a group that's working in sports-related activities, and so on and so on and so on. Because if we don't know they exist, how are we going to utilize them and use them? Yeah. They're giving up their time. A lot of these are, you know, volunteers. A lot of them are paid minimal wage. They just have a passion to give something back to the community. So it's important that we utilize their time properly to give them an opportunity to do what they're really good at. Another one that's popped up over the past couple of years as well is a prison project. I think it's called the Resettlement Project, where they're looking at focusing on young people, adults coming out of prison back into the community, but then also potentially supporting families. Yeah. And I know this year they were doing some Eid boxes, some Ramzan boxes, and they were giving them into the prisons for Muslim prisoners, with mats and prayer stuff in there, some stuff for breaking their fast, and so on and so on. Really, really good stuff. That sounds interesting. Really good stuff.
As you know, the harsh reality is with accommodating people or their needs when it comes to prison. It's a very difficult uprooting of an entire family. It's not just the one person that serves a prison sentence, it's everyone. So the fact the project is out there helping, you know, others understand as well within the community is quite...
And you work with young people in prisons professionally as part of your day-to-day job. What's that like from a... How does it make you feel going into that environment, seeing those young people, knowing they're from our communities, and what's there for them?
To be honest, it's disheartening That's the first thing. It's the reality that any young person, irrespective of faith, has found themselves in custody, and they're always, like with any young person or an adult, you're always one decision away from ending up in a situation like that. But the fact that majority of them come from good backgrounds, and those that don't come from good backgrounds, they've been, dealt with bad cards. It's unfortunate some of them have found themselves in that situation. Services wise, things that I would say have got better in the last 10, 15 years.
Okay.
In terms of what they can access, or
internally,
yeah.
What about externally? For what happens to a young person? They're released from prison today. What happens? Do they just come out and just filter back into society, or?
But there's an expectation that they have to filter back into society. But in terms of resettlement, it's normally they are prepped.
Yeah.
Some months before their release, given opportunities or given signposting or access. So there will be a key worker that will hopefully help them. But it normally depends on the type of sentence they've received. If they are going to have a probation officer when they come out, or key links, it will always depend. Sometimes people come out of prison and then they are left to their own devices to try and access things, or it's a family member or a friend. And unfortunately, there are reasons why the reoffending rate happens, so fast with those when they feel left out.
Yeah, it's a shame. Statistically,
it's very high.
Very, very. I'm going to make a wild guess now. I know it, but I just can't think of it. We're close to 15% of the prison population, and we're less than 3% of the population, maybe less than that.
Yeah, it is. It's the reality.
So we are hugely overrepresented in the prison system. What's the kind of common themes of young people being in the system? Is it drugs? Is it violent crime?
Yeah.
Is it burglaries? What is it? Are there patterns, or are they really random?
The thing is, at the risk of this turning into a criminology session and looking at exactly why and the patterns of offending, I'd say a lot of it has been from looking at the court system. It's been kind of the class A,
drugs related.
Yeah, drugs related, and violence coming second. I'd say, and it's to do with easy money, a perceived lack of opportunity. And the reason I say perceived is because sometimes people love to use that. There's nothing for me to do. There's nothing for us to do out there. There is. Sometimes you just haven't had the opportunity to find it, or there is another element to it that just can't be asked. Yeah. To access that.
And this is why, again, coming back to the projects that we have in our community, and I say our community that are specifically, they're all of the projects that we've spoken about in reality are delivered and being run by people in our community, Muslim people. There's some good stuff going on. Why are our young people not getting opportunities to filter into these projects and then out into the bigger world?
I'd say the reason, like I said, there's a variety of reasons why people offend, but sometimes the reason is just the push and pull, or they're being dragged in between. Do I want to be like this person who is in my family is doing quite well? Or there's the draw of offending behavior, especially when there are young people from very good backgrounds, very stable homes. Nobody in the family has any offending history whatsoever, but they find themselves in that kind of lifestyle because they think it's cool to be a roadman. Yeah, so let's not be about the bush. Yeah, it's like that because they want to be involved in being involved in the road life, and that's what happens.
Okay, well, that's we need to get our young people away from that as much as possible, and we all have a responsibility. It's not just these projects' responsibility. We as parents, we as members of the community, we as businesses, we as people that have influence, your neighbours, we can all have an impact on young people's lives. It's just how we choose to do that and go about that. Food banks is on the rise. Again, sadly, for our community, I can think of one straight off the top, the Peace Centre, doing some amazing work. Incredible. Predominantly, not even in a Muslim area. That side of the city, Fern Court, Fernby Lodge, bottom of Uppingham Road. Yeah. They do everything all over the city, but that's where they're based. I mean, I went over there to see them last year, and I used old ladies, but there was a group of old ladies that they're serving in the estate in terms of doing their food and giving food banks. Brilliant. They don't have to do that.
No.
But they've recognised the need. religiously see it as a duty and an obligation as well, and they're stepping up.
Yeah,
you know, and they've had some tough times in that space.
A lot of trials and tribulations. But if you're looking at a community initiative, that is probably like one of those that's right at the top. It's in the Premier League, especially because of how they've set up and their ideals and morals. They've not really swayed from that from day one.
And we have a drugs project now that's emerged in the last couple of years. And we'll both know these well because, again, when we started our project back in 2004, it was around drugs. And I can remember, and it's bizarre because when we were starting it and we produced the workshops and the literature and designed a program to intervene with young people and do a range of different interventions and whatever, there was more people in our community that criticised the program than welcomed it. And the reason the criticism was there was because you're exposing our community to things that others shouldn't know about.
Yeah.
But what we were actually saying was, this is the reality to our community. And these were prevention programs to stop it creeping.
Yeah.
Now, mission creep's gone. Drugs in our community is rife. You know, let's not beat around the bush. It's rife. New projects come in town, been around a couple of years. They're probably working towards the more rehabilitation end of the project, but we still need some prevention space. And I'm hoping, you know, we can get to do something in that area. But it's amazing how things come full cycle.
They always come full cycle.
It's amazing.
That's a fact. Yeah. And some of those I remember that used to obstruct or oppose those types of issues have then turned around asking for help.
Yeah.
And it was something I even knew 100% it was going to happen. And it always does.
It always does come full circle. Another sports projects. So we've got lots of clubs, boxing clubs, cricket clubs, football clubs that are getting scores of young people put in there. You see that, football and scores. Yeah. Scores of young people into that space. They're important as well, aren't they? Locally, they're very important.
Sport is always going to be a buy-in, and it's always one of the most popular things for males and females around the world. And Leicester's no different with our kind of sporting history and generally how people, you know, just amateur level wanting to get involved and have a kickabout or play cricket, whatever it is. So all of the clubs like CFA, Rangers, Nirvana, you know, generally all of these different clubs in OB, etc., all the different parts of the county have done some incredible work. The boxing clubs as well. The list could be, we could be talking about some of these groups and what they've done for people for a long time. Yeah,
another group I did miss actually that are very behind the scenes, but I think in a really important space are the groups that look after the cemetery at Saffron Lane. They go up there, they do the tidy ups, they cut grass, they wash headstones, they provide jugs. They do some brilliant stuff, and they're kind of unsung heroes that just sit in the back.
They don't need recognition.
They just get on with their work. But when you go up there and the place looks immaculate, just think to yourself, how does this happen? And it's those people that are doing it day to day, week to week, no fuss, no recognition. But how important is it, especially when you've got a loved one up there, that you go up there and then the environment feels comfortable rather than looking tatty and all over the place and whatever. These guys are doing it.
Yeah. And they've got a sense of pride as well. When you speak to some of the volunteers, and they share that passion as well of exactly why they're doing it. But like you said, they're unsung. Then they don't need any praise. They're not doing it for any accolade, and they're the best types of volunteers.
So the community's changing from where it was when we started doing our voluntary work and community work, grassroots work, bloody 2004. It's nearly 20 years, Hassan.
Yeah.
You were a bit younger than me, aren't you, to be fair, but 20 plus years, you know, we've been in that space. The community's changing. The diversity of the community is changing. You know, you've got people from Africa, India, Pakistan, Somalia, Afghanistan, Kurdistan, Iraq, Iran, everywhere. Everywhere. What's going to change in society that, you know, keeps us together? What do we need to do? Young people wise.
I think young people will always look for the newest trend and something that is more appealing for them. And tech has been one of those things. Sport. Obviously, last week when we mentioned the tech industry as well, it's very popular, and it's something that children, aspire to be involved in the online world, and it is a changing face. So whereas traditional jobs that parents thought, no, my son's going to do this or my daughter's going to do that, but they want to go into something completely different. So I think that's something that's going to unify a lot of the children and young people in the city in terms of what kind of jobs they want to access.
What do you think the city's going to look like visually? I mean, we're the 10th biggest city in the UK. And I think our population, we're the biggest in the East Midlands, population-wise, we're the biggest in the East Midlands. But the footprint in terms of the literal, square meterage or square mileage, whatever you want to call it, we're a small city. You could probably drive end-to-end Leicester in 20 minutes if there's no traffic. If there's traffic, it'd probably take you 2 days. In normal circumstance, you can get from one side of the city, which is brilliant. Makes it really attractive. But we're growing, and I think the only way we can grow is up. And I think the only other way we can grow is with city living. City centres are dying. There's online shopping taking over, as you said. Everything's becoming techie. Your big out-of-town retail parks are getting more attractive. Just turn up, one trip. There's coffee shop, there's food shops, there's clothes shops, there's toiletry shops, there's everything there. Get back in your car, go home. There's no walking around, nothing. So the city centre's got to change. What will that look like? What will that mean for us, though?
I think as long as there isn't like a sharp, like a skills exodus where people that are very skilled, young people decide to leave immediately.
Leave the city and go elsewhere.
Go elsewhere, which is, to be honest, I would always recommend that, young people do look to travel. And look for opportunities nationwide or even abroad, and look for things to do. But there's got to be, you've got to give back in some way to the city you live in. So as long as we're not left in, any. I've been in some places actually in the country where they say, oh, most of our young people have moved out.
Well, we've looked. We have looked because we've got 2 big universities in the city. Obviously, DMU and Leicester Uni, and Loughborough that's kind of in the county. And we look at the influx of students that are going into there, being trained, being educated, getting their qualifications, and then how do they move out, or why do they move out? And there's varying reasons. Some, like you say, just want to explore new things. Some literally have come to the city to study and now are going back home. And it's a bizarre mix, but we're trying to make the city as attractive as possible for people to stay and work, but we've got to find them jobs.
That's the thing.
There's got to be jobs.
Opportunities. They're not going to stay. It's just as simple as that. And retaining some of these skills is a very difficult thing. But those organisations have to be here. They have to be present, stand up, and be counted. But they have to offer money. Otherwise, the young people are not going to stick around.
It's important, and money is important.
And things are getting expensive generally. So that when they're trying to plan forecast for the next 10, 15 years, they're not going to think about just getting the bare minimum here if they can get it more down in London or in Europe.
So one of my kind of aims going forward now, following this Ramzan and whatever else, is to look at opportunities of how I can corral some of these organisations into a space to be presenting an external look of activities for communities, but also then how we can support some of these projects in different ways. So, I don't know, for argument's sake, we've mentioned 25 organisations. There's probably another 50, to be fair, because there's lots of good work going on. Between those 50 organisations, there might be 400 volunteers. How are we utilising those volunteers, and what can we utilise those volunteers for collectively across the city for a better and bigger impact? And then also financially, how can we use finances better? How can we use resource better? Instead of duplicating, everybody needs an office, everybody needs a desk, everybody needs a cricket bat, everybody needs a football. Do you? How are we utilising resource? And so on and so on. We've had a brother join us. Assalamu alaikum. Put your headphones on.
Alaikum salam.
I've got a text on here. Ask the brother what he's doing here today.
Yeah.
You're not the tax man, are you?
No.
No, okay.
No. If I was, I would be driving a much better car.
Okay. Come a bit closer to the mic. So just introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
Yeah, my name's Abu Bakr. I'm from Leicester. And we're here just doing a fundraiser for Darul Uloom in Mozambique, Beira.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're really struggling, to pay for their students' education for Hifz and Alim course.
Right.
So we're just doing a fundraiser. We're selling biryani, akni, Chinese rice, and lots of sweets, macaroons, and biscuits and cakes and everything, milk cake.
Where's that on the front?
Outside,
Evington Road, outside the radio
outside
station.
Jaiwala, yeah.
So the brother's come to do a plug for his charity in Mozambique that's raising money for students there to continue with their courses, Islamic education courses, which is very important. And they've got a stall on the front outside Evington Road, right outside the radio station, with some goods.
Lots of goods, yeah.
Lots of goods, cakes, macaroons.
Everything, yeah. And you can come and give your zakat as well there as well, if you want to.
Okay.
We've taken Sadqa Lillah and zakat, and it's for Al-Markazul Islamic Lit-Talim wa Tarbiyah, that's what it's called. It's in Beira, Mozambique.
Can we put the details up on the site, Akil, if that's all right, so listeners can know what to do? So if you give Akil your details.
Yeah, I will do, yeah.
How long's the project been going?
It's just literally just started a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Because my mama, he reached out to us because obviously they're struggling to pay for the students.
Okay.
So I said, see what you can do. So we started off just asking people to give their zakat. And then we thought we'll do a little fundraiser as well, just to because obviously everyone's in the giving mood right now with Ramadan. So
Yeah.
we thought we'll take advantage.
Well, internationally, Leicester has a reputation for being one of the biggest givers for charities. I can say that heartedly.
Yeah.
We are. The community responds fantastically, and I'm sure if we can get your details up there and out there.
Yeah, we've seen that today. It's been
There'll be
amazing.
some
It's
brothers
been
and
absolutely
sisters.
amazing.
Stop if you're driving past on Evington Road and spend your £5, £3, £2, £50 on
Don't stop
something.
on double yellows, though. Stop properly.
Yeah, don't stop on the double yellows, or
yeah,
Akil will come out and take the car away. But come and give to this charity. It's all good stuff, and it's Ramzan. It's a great time to do it, and may Allah reward you all for doing so.
Ameen.
Okay.
Jazakallah khair.
No problem,
Thanks for
brother.
your time.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
There you go. Another project, Hassan. You see?
Straight.
Some
Told
good
you.
stuff here in Leicester.
Leicester
People
doesn't
just
mess about.
committed to the cause, however it's going to be. So, yeah, that's my objective going forward following this Ramadan, is to see how we can pull some of these organisations together to start being more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Active.
I think they are active. I think they're doing some brilliant stuff. Honestly, I take my hat off to them. I speak to them and I think about myself, 20 odd years ago where I was, and I know how hard it is. I know when nobody wants to listen to you. I know what it's like when no one wants to hear what you've got to say. I know when you've got no money. I know when you walk in the streets looking for to give the projects over and it's not being received. We've been there. You've been there. I've been there. Many others have been there as well. So I feel the pain of these organisations. But how can we utilise our resource better as a community? That's what I'm trying to. That's going to be my focus going forward. I've done. God, I couldn't even tell you how many projects I've been involved in now in the past 30 years, from our community to equalities to sport, etc., etc. And I just feel there's an opportunity here. Whilst we've got this appetite, while we've got this group, while we've got these young people, while we've got these volunteers, while we've got a space to do it, we just need to get on and do it. I think.
Yeah. One thing I like is, especially with the rise of social media, where sometimes people, usually it's kind of parents or those that are professionals, will say, I am working with someone, or I know of someone that is looking for volunteering opportunity, and it may just be they need experience for a course, or they need to get out and be active. There will always be those answers there, but sometimes those questions are just singular, as in they're not pooled anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think if they can be directed towards a resource such as this, it will allow people to have that access, so we know exactly where to find the signpost, the right people.
And I mean, the brother just came in and spoke about a project in Mozambique. I mean, the charities that we have in Leicester, God, there's LIA Relief Trust, there's Rahma Mercy, there's Friends of Al-Aqsa. You could keep going and going and going and going. There's so many. There's One Nation, and they're all doing amazing work, and they all generate income. And as we said, the community here in Leicester are unbelievable at giving.
Yeah.
To support good things. how can we harness that so they're supporting grassroots projects? That's what I want to focus on going forward. How are our communities and those that are able to give, from businesses to people in their houses and their homes, want to donate in different ways, how are we going to be able to do that to grassroots organisations, voluntary organisations on the ground that are working with your young people that are on drugs, that are working with your young people that are heading towards crime and prison, that are working with women and females in our communities that need help and support for a number of different reasons, from maybe domestic violence at the extreme end to just wanting to get some confidence, build some confidence to get into a workplace or to do some volunteering. Where is that? It's everywhere, scattered. We just need to put it in one place.
I would say just to be stand up and be counted. So to make the noise, to knock on all these doors and ask people exactly why something isn't happening on our doorstep. I'd say if any listeners that want to start a project or have seen a gap in any service that's been discussed today or something you know of, and you know there are many charities and organizations already doing things, go and knock on doors and ask them, why is there nothing for this, or how can I get involved? Just ask. And but the only thing you can be told is no anyway, so you might as well just ask.
Being told no is a no-win situation. It's no better than where you started, is it? So you've got nothing to lose from that perspective. I mean, one of the I forgot what I was going to say now. I was talking about, who was we talking about?
The charities.
I was talking about the charities. That's what I was going to say. One of the charities that they do some amazing international work. It's not just local. I don't know how it would work. It's just going to blurt it out and say it as it is. If all the charities that were locally based, i.e. registered here in Leicester and collecting money from Leicester, let's just say for argument's sake there's 20. We know there's more, but let's just say there's 20. And they're collecting finances annually from the community of Leicester to support their charities. If each one of those charities were to give 5% of their income to grassroots organisations, imagine how much money that would be.
Yeah.
Just pull a figure out the air of how much you think that could be.
500.
1,000?
Yeah. Let's say, for example, if that was just that amount of money pooled in.
5% of 20 projects collecting money locally in Leicester over an annual period. It'd be like an internal zakat, wouldn't it? That's what it'd be. I'm trying to find a terminology. Got some strange faces looking at me through the glass like, yeah, good idea, but good luck with that. But let's take £500,000 then. If it was £500,000 and we could redistribute that through skills, training, resource, opportunity, volunteers to the projects that we have in our community, imagine what that could do.
And we wouldn't have a lot of the issues that do take place.
We wouldn't.
The thing is, though, being in terms of reality, money is not always going to get rid of a lot of the issues that take place.
I agree.
Throwing money at projects in the past has been counterproductive as well, where resources haven't been used properly or people just don't know what to do. It comes and goes, but you are very well equipped to deal with issues when you have. Right now, there's so many resources and centres that are shut down if you drive around the city.
Yeah.
And we remember what some of these places were like, and if they were still open and able to utilise the services, there wouldn't be a number of issues that still take place right now.
Well, a few years back, maybe 3-4 years back, I kind of, in my positions, in my roles, when officers used to come and say, we're looking at doing these programs, we're looking at doing these projects, and there was finances associated, I used to have a red line and say, I'm not interested in any programs or projects you're doing unless you're investing in the people in those communities. Because if you invest in people, it's like that, give a man a fish and give him a fish. Yeah. If you invest in people, in communities, they become less reliant and they become less dependent on, we'll use the word handout. They'll become less dependent on the handout. We've got to invest in communities through training programs, through education, through showing them how to be structured organisationally, registered charities, doing things in the right way. So they know how to obtain grants, they know how to obtain funding, they know how to upskill young people, and so on and so on. Going back 4 years, I used to say, do not show me any project or program that you want to deliver in this city if it doesn't have an investment in people. And one of the best programs I think we delivered was when I was in the PCC's office, and we created a community program that invested solely in the community groups. So we had 20 community groups come into a space over, I think it was a 12-week module that taught them everything, not everything, but taught them everything in regards to how to run an organization, how to be on social media, how to speak publicly, how to look at grants, how to fill in grant applications, how to network, how statutory systems work, etc., etc., etc. One of the best programs we ever designed. And we're out of that office now, but they're on cohort 2 of that. And hopefully there'll be a cohort 3. We left it in as a legacy program. But we need more of that, because you're not going to be around forever. I'm not going to be around forever. And some of these people that are delivering these programs are going to burn out. As you say, they'll disappear, they'll burn out. Some of them will move on naturally. You know, so where is that platform that we're creating in our community for our next generation? That's my next objective. That's my next personal goal in this space. So I want to retire at 55 is my plan. Not retire from working, but retire from I have to turn up at this time and leave at this time to pay the bills. I still want to work, but I want to do the things that I want to do rather than the things I'm told to do, if that makes sense. So with this, I said, right, I've got one more big project that I want to deliver in this community. This is it. So all of you that are listening, this is what I'm telling you now that I'm coming to do. I'm looking at this. It's been worked on over a number of years now, and it's growing some legs. To be fair, the appetite from businesses, the appetite from some sponsors, the appetite from people in some organizations has been quite good. I cannot lie. We just need to make it happen. So watch this space.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
I think the reinvesting in people has got a lot better.
Yeah.
That's one thing I've noticed in the last, especially, I'd say 5 or 10 years. A lot more enterprising groups, a lot more groups willing, or a lot of individuals willing to invest in young people to take to carry the torch, so to speak. I've noticed a lot of that has taken place.
We just need to make it happen. We've got 2 minutes left, Hassan, of our final radio station this year. You know, I hope you had a good Ramadan.
Alhamdulillah, yeah.
It was... I always enjoy it, to tell you the truth. I tell you one thing that's disappointed me, and not personally, and I don't want people to get upset with me when I say this, but I feel I've got to say it. And I'm going to phrase a term that somebody mentioned on a talk that I was listening to a couple of weeks back, and they were talking about how Eid is there as a celebration, and it's to celebrate all the effort and all the hard work that we've put in to this Ramadan period, this Ramzan period, all the worship, all the extra prayers, all the namaz, the tarawih, the fasting, everything. You give your utmost, you go above and beyond, into the late nights, into the early mornings, going above and beyond, trying to seek the benefits of this blessed month. But what they said was, Ramzan has just become a festival. It's becoming a festival where every night people are out celebrating here, breaking iftar here. We're going into the night in each other's houses, talking about this and talking about that, and having an event in this place and an event in that place. It's not a festival. It's a time for you to connect with the Almighty and make, good of the most sacred month of the calendar year. And we're doing nonsense. And it really touched me, that did. And, I really, really thought about that hard. And I look around. I mean, in my phone, I have 50 invites to things in the month of... it's bizarre. This is for you to connect, not with people. We can connect with people every day of the week. This is for you to connect. We've got 15 seconds. Say your goodbyes, Hassan.
Jazakallah everyone for listening, and to all of the other shows and presenters and the team behind the scenes here. Thank you.
Yes, brilliant. Jazakallah for the radio team. You've been outstanding as always, and thank you to the community